thoughtful ideas and suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and packages all the countries and listen to
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us perhaps for the first time here for ACC's TV Dialogue Houston, we're here now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, on top of the show, let me thank you for your thoughtful calls, emails, and text messages concerning previous shows we've aired here on HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, but particularly your ideas for topics, guests, and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. For after all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show here proudly at HCC now in its 30th season, 30th year. I have a great show lined up for you for the second part of this week's discussion. The first part, we wanted to focus on ethics and religion and what's happening or not happening or who's speaking out for our children and all those things that we've seen in the press and the media the last few weeks. Because I've learned, as we've all kind of reflected in our society, the society is measured and judged by basically two poles, two ends of the spectrum. How we take care of and treat our children, and how do we take care and treat our elderly. And those two things become very important in how we do that. And I couldn't think of a better person to have the discussion about what's happening with our elderly, who's helping them, who's supporting them, who helps them and gives them the tools and the things they need and the skills to be successful at this stage of life, other than our good friend from the AARP. And joining me today is Rosalinda Martinez, who is the Director of Community Strategy for AARP Texas, and a great friend and a part of our wonderful Houston 2036 Equity Task Force. And today's topic, basically in a broad sense, is doing right by our seniors. And guess who is poised exactly to do right by our seniors every single day in all the things they offer, and that's AARP. It's such a great pleasure to have you join us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Larry. And thank you, first of all, for everything you do in our community, for, again, just advocating for ensuring we have an equitable city and all the work you've been doing for so many years, in particular, most recently with 2036 and how you gathered us all to look at that and how we prepare for the next 14 years. So thank you for all you do, first of all.
Well, thank you. Before we start with Rosalinda, and I'm gonna let her just kind of talk about AARP, because all the work they're doing is just so much. I'm just gonna give you the, because I want you to do the same thing I did also. Go to their website. And when you go to the website, you're going to come up with this wonderful list of all the things that you can learn, do, and grow from by being part of and looking at AARP. So I'm just going to run them down. She's going to talk about them in detail, but I just got to run this list down because I was just amazed myself. The member benefits, disruptive aging, communities, information for professionals, the AARP Foundation, health and wellness, Social Security and Medicare, family caregiving, work and jobs, how to take action, how to have fun, how to read, watch, and listen to help you grow, how to serve, how to give back, how to share your experiences. You name it. Almost any category you can think about, they have a spot and place for you. So I'm just going to stop there and just say, to me, it was just wonderful to dive into that. So tell us about the wonderful work of AARP.
Well, what a great list, Larry. I'm getting tired just thinking about it. All the work that we do, right? It's a lot, but we have an amazing team across the state. And what a lot of people do not know is we're the largest nonprofit in the country. We are extremely blessed to have over 38 million members across the United States. And here in Texas, we have 2.3 million members across our 5 local offices that are not just in Houston, but San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, and RGV, Rio Grande Valley. And so we have representation throughout the whole state, as you mentioned. Our work in my department specifically does not touch memberships. We do the community work, and everything that we do is for free for members and non-members. We know that if we're in the community and we're advocating for what matters most, for topics that are of interest, and look out for our older adults, we don't say seniors, we say older adults, that we will make a difference. And as you can imagine, the pandemic changed all of that work. We had to really catch up with times and really shift a lot of our focus areas. One of them was looking at the technology divide and technology training and isolation and resources and how we were gonna keep people connected during those 2 years, right? And we continue to do all of that as we enter into our volunteers coming back in the community, our members coming back to events, our members wanting to be involved again by volunteering and just being back out there and engaged and giving back. And so our mission really is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. And that really falls under all those buckets you just mentioned, right? From providing education and resources to providing fun activities to combating isolation, et cetera.
Well, and your motto is one that I've personally resonated with. Your motto of AARP is to serve, not to be served. To serve, not to be served. It is a true model of servant leadership. And as you mentioned, you are the largest nonprofit in the United States with some 38 million. But a good thing about that to mention is that 81% of every dollar, 81% of every dollar that you give to AARP goes toward programs and services. And that's really a wonderful benchmark for a nonprofit that large. Let's talk about some of the things that people can get engaged with from two sides. The learning of the benefits and the opportunities and the skills, but also the volunteering and giving back. I love that those two sides are kind of in equal proportion. One is for you to take in, and the other one is for you to be able to give back and give out.
Yes, and I think one of the things I'm very proud of during the last few years is how we kept our volunteers involved. We provided technology training through partnerships like the Mexican Institute of Greater Houston, where we provided technology training in language and Spanish. We did the same in English. We trained folks on Zoom, on YouTube, on Google Hangouts, and we made sure that we provided those outlets for them to connect and again combat that isolation. We know a lot of seniors are still dealing with it at home, and we have a lot of various opportunities to reach people that have low tech access. We cannot forget the seniors who are at home who need education and might not have a computer or social media, because there are a lot of those members that are still out there that we need to ensure we remember. But volunteering is a great way to get involved. Our volunteers really make their experience what they want it to be for them. And so we have wonderful volunteers who are retired from universities who want to come out and lead presentations on fraud or on caregiving. We do a lot with employer caregiving and ensuring we educate companies and employers if they have someone who's caring for someone who is sick at home and they have a full-time job. So we go out and we provide resources to corporations in that sense. Or if you're a caregiver, that's another outlet that we do, is we provide education as to how to create a plan for caring for a loved one. We have a lot of fun with purpose events where we teach gardening through partners and walking and healthy living and cooking. We partner with the Houston Food Bank where we provide healthy eating cooking classes and information for seniors through their boxes and through that partnership. We really touch on so many different angles through partnerships, because we cannot do anything without our partners and our volunteers. And so in Houston, we have quite a wonderful group of volunteers. I was so excited on Monday when we had our first in-person volunteer meeting. As you can imagine, Larry, we were the very last ones to come out and have our volunteers back because of the demographic that we serve. Right, and so our volunteers hung in there with us. We had to remember to really just check in on them. And you say this a lot, of lead with empathy, right? And be there for them and their families and be there, with them to provide those resources. And we did that. And on Monday, when we returned, we had a full house, not one empty chair, with the volunteers who were excited to be back, to be gathered together. A lot of times they find purpose in helping us spread our mission and our work. And then that provides purpose to me personally and our team when we built these relationships with our volunteers, who the majority of them are 65 plus. When I was looking at our recent numbers, we want to ensure that they represent our community as well, that they are diverse, because they are the trusted source in each neighborhood that will allow us to have that reach within each community and spread our mission and our message.
That's so important that we respect that trusted source of their experience, of their wisdom and their knowledge, so that they can participate and share that. There's so much to be learned from seniors, as my cousins just call me the senior veteran. That's so much to be learned from them, and to keep them healthy and keep them engaged so that they can share with all of us at all ages, from the youth to any group of millennials or anywhere else, to be able to interact with them in partnership with young people and their age and others is so important. I was struck by the quote from your founder, Ellen Piercy Andrews. The challenge to live up to our better selves, to believe well of our fellow man, and perhaps by doing so to help create the good, to experiment, to explore, to change, and to grow. Wow, what a mission. It's very clear that AARP has the ability, the motto and the mission and the intent to do things in a deeper way in community rather than just surface level. And I see that in all the programs that you offer.
And I wanted to add, you brought up Dr. Ethel Percy Andrews, who's our founder. She actually, a lot of folks don't know this story. She found a retired educator, a teacher, living in a chicken coop because she could not afford housing or health care. And that's where the idea sparked more than 60 years ago for her to start AARP. Never would she have thought the impact that it would have, and that 60 plus years later, we would have offices in every single state across the country, and really be able to reach so many people because of this one thought and this one person who impacted her life.
So one person can make a difference,
Absolutely.
as she proved. So as she inspires others to make that difference in serving other human beings, because that's really all what it's about. How do we serve and take care of other human beings that we're called to do so? And how do we do that? So I want to switch gears a little bit because I don't want to run out of time, about another important aspect because it's sometimes overlooked. And that is the caregivers, the role of the caregivers, and how important to be able to offer things for the caregivers, to nurture, to undergird, to support them, to thank them, to really appreciate them, because so many times they're the unsung heroes of taking care of our elderly. And it's so important that caregivers get that kind of help and support.
Absolutely. And that is one of the big focus areas for AARP. And a lot of folks who might not, even think caregiving, what is a caregiver? Caregivers provide critical support to adults. In this case, we're not referring to providing, support or care for a child. We're talking about those caring for adults with a chronic, disabling, or serious health condition. And in many cases, caregivers are caring for a neighbor or a friend, a loved one, a family member. But we have so many people impacted by this, and it's not talked about really as much as it should be, even in the workforce, right? When you think about how it impacts productivity, at the end of the day, of the employer, and I'm very passionate about from the employer perspective, because my background before this was working at a chamber of commerce where we worked with a lot of small businesses, and me seeing and hearing the personal testimonials of people who their employer was just not supportive of them, and then they ended up having to leave their job because their employer didn't help or did not provide a caregiving friendly culture. But there's so many things that can be done. Larry, there are 40 million Americans who care for a loved one in the United States, and just in Texas, 3.4 million caregivers who are caring for a loved one. Mm-hmm. Something else to consider is each community, each demographic has very distinct ways of how they treat caregiving. And I mean that because in the Hispanic community, for example, I'm Hispanic, there's not even a word for caregiver in Spanish, because you just kind of know you're caring for a loved one, and there's not a specific term that defines it. and just the different nuances that I've learned with African American caregivers, Hispanic caregivers, a working caregiver, really even a caregiver in the LGBTQ community, a veteran caregiver. The needs are so specific to each of those caregivers and what they need and the resources that they need, that it's just so important to take all of that into consideration. And so that's why AARP provides resources to help you prepare a plan so it doesn't all fall on the caregiver, because then guess what? The caregiver ends up getting sick, right? They don't take care of themselves, and that ends up being a burden later for someone else as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important that we recognize the role, the function, the duties, obligations, responsibilities of the caregiver to the person they're helping to serve. But also that same thing I just listed applies to how we consider them and take care of them. So it's not either or, it's both and. For the person they're serving and how do we serve the caregivers. When you're talking about the different definitions of caregivers or the words for caregivers in different ethnic, racial groups, somebody always said, "What? That's just what you're supposed to do." There's no definition, there's no title, there's no word. That's just what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take care of the elderly. In many traditions and families and cultures, that's just the way it's understood. But how do we transition to the discussion today, though? There is a seemingly less of a clarity on many young people's responsibilities, duties, obligations to take care of their elderly like there have been in past generations. And it seems now that many of the caregiving roles are not family members or extended family members, but now being turned over to nursing homes or assisted living facilities. And that's great well, it's not great. It's interesting how we've changed how we see that. I had a friend of mine years ago, and he and I've talked about this, so it's not speaking out of turn. He said, I would love to have been able to take care of my mother and my family at the same time. I had to make a choice to take care of my family and raise my 4 kids. But here's what I did. I'm fortunate and blessed by God to earn enough money to put her in a good facility. I would have preferred to have her at my home, but I couldn't balance both of those at the same time. So he said, I make a good living, so I was able to put it. He said, but I've always felt guilty about that. He said, just because thank God I was able to do it, I still feel guilty about that. But so many young people are making those kind of choices these days. The proliferation of senior citizens living facilities is just grown. And I'll stop on this point. The only reason I brought it up is because they're all not equal. Some are really good. A few may be great, but most of them are in the middle, and some of them are really bad. And I know AARP, through your policy and advocacy, looks at some of these issues also. How do we see that piece of the puzzle?
AARP, we understand this is even becoming a bigger issue, right? We know that half of all caregivers are millennials and Gen Xers. Going back to, again, the age, and not one caregiver is the same. Not one situation is the same. The common trend that I see is they're all looking for support. They're all looking for how to make the best decision that helps, the situation that they're in. And sometimes they just need to be educated on, if I do select a nursing home, or if I do select, I need some help, how do I do that? Where do I even start? How do I even navigate the financial assistance of it? There's respite care funding for folks who are caregivers. That's one of the areas we would advocate in for the state of Texas. It's still not enough. We continue to advocate for more of that, but there's funds available, if they're caring for a veteran. But the main thing that I see that people need is support and be able to talk to one another and get resources. This morning, right before here, we had a long-term care workshop where folks were able to ask questions and figure out what's the best option, what are resources available to them. It can be very stressful and very confusing for folks. But if they have someone who they can rely on and say, they've been through it, and that's how we help, we connect them to the individuals who can provide those resources and help them navigate these very difficult, very stressful situations, because again, it continues to rise even more.
I want our viewing audience to know another resource associated with AARP, and that's through the AARP Foundation, which I think it does some wonderful work itself. It describes itself as a public interest law firm at the intersection of aging and social justice. I just love that. At the intersection of aging and social justice, because so many of these issues really are about social justice, particularly when it comes to the fairness and ethical treatment, right, of the elderly. And there's a report and a study that the foundation just released, I think it was this week, which I was fascinated by, on the elderly's employment. Nearly 2 out of 3 women aged 50 plus regularly face discrimination in trying to get a job because of either age, skin tone, or weight, which I thought was just kind of interesting. And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add, yes, our Disrupt Aging campaign, right, which really advocates for ensuring employers can sign a pledge to continue to hire older adults and stay away from age discrimination. But we know it's an issue, right? We continue to advocate for that. We continue to advocate for fairness. Our foundation in Houston, and I don't work for the foundation, that's a separate entity, but they do a lot on food insecurity for seniors, what you just mentioned as well, which is extremely important. And we do that through our partnerships as well, as job skills readiness and training. I mean, during the pandemic, a lot of seniors or older adults really, or even just 50 plus, because we serve the 50 plus, lost their job and they needed training. And we went and we sought partnerships where they could provide those Excel trainings, the Word, the computer literacy, continuing educational opportunities through colleges, and providing all of that, everything absolutely free. But the stories we heard and just the gratitude that we heard at the end of everything from folks saying, thank you, AARP, or thank you to our partners. Honestly, we could not do the work we do without our partners, but that the great resignation, people continuing to, again, just lose their jobs. It's been a rough 2 years. I mean, we continue to fight hard for our 50 plus and continue to provide all of those resources, whether it's AARP or the AARP Foundation.
Let's talk about some fun stuff now. Because now that if everybody's getting back out and the seniors are coming back out and they're willing to, AARP has always had a long plethora list of fun activities to do, whether it was concerts or field trips or whatever. Tell us a little bit about those, because I have a friend of mine who's a member here locally, and she loves whenever there's a trip or anywhere, AARP, she's put me on the bus, I'm going. So tell us about some of those.
Yeah, so we have tons of activity coming up over the summer, and in particular, the fall is extremely busy for us, but we have partnerships with the Houston Botanic Garden. For those who haven't been, it's an amazing, and I don't know if you've been, Larry, but it's 162 acres of beautiful gardens where we go and we provide free entrance to folks who sign up for those events. We've had cooking classes there, 3-mile walking classes around the garden to really get to know what plants are available, how they can use those herbs for cooking. We've had classes on, or actually concerts at Miller Outdoor Theater. We just had an event this past weekend. This weekend, actually tomorrow, we'll be at Pride, the Pride Fest. We are supporting.
Oh, wonderful.
We have, and volunteers come to those events and help us promote our mission and provide resources. So concerts, cooking, dancing, walking classes. And then we have a lot of the educational resources as well. We have estate planning is something that we see a lot as a need for communities of color and underserved, where they don't know how to get their documents in order. If they're going to buy a home and they need advice from attorneys, we have a lot of workshops with Lone Star Legal Aid all summer that they can really look at from a home ownership perspective, how they can get their estate in order. And you know, it's just important information, but fun is extremely important to us, and we continue to do it, and we will throughout the year. For Hispanic Heritage Month, we always have partnerships with the Museum of Fine Arts, Miller Outdoor, but you can find all of those on our website, which is aarp.org/Houston, or what we call Fun with Purpose events.
That's what I was waiting for, was that wonderful address. We forget, and you just mentioned something that I think we tend to forget about, and that's the gay elderly community. There is a sizable population, the gay elderly community, who are doing a lot of volunteer stuff, because I run into them a lot at some of the events. And just so, since we're talking about aging, I'll put myself in that bunch. Somebody asked me the other day, it's funny you mentioned the Houston Botanical Garden. So where is that? Where? I said, the old Gus Wortham golf course. Oh yeah, okay. Now I know exactly where you're talking. Give them a point of reference for the old timers. We got about a minute left. I want to make sure that I haven't left anything out that you wanted to mention or get in. So here's your opportunity before we close out. But again, it's just so great to have you join us this afternoon.
Now, well, thank you so much, Larry. I just want to tell people that, again, we're here to help, to be a resource. When we can do something, we'll connect you through our partners to provide those much needed resources. Contact our office, and we're always looking for volunteers. Now that we're returning back to in person, we've lost some volunteers who just haven't been back engaged. So we're recruiting more because we have tons of fun activity coming up. So hopefully we can meet you all in your local community as we're back out there again.
Rosalinda, I cannot thank you enough for being with us this afternoon. Again, thank you. We're going to continue this probably again down the road. We'll pick up on this journey. But go to the webpage, go to the website. You'll be surprised. You'll have fun. A lot of stuff to navigate, a lot of information. Very simple, aarp.org/Houston. And make sure that you look at all the stuff that you can participate in. Get your card, become a member. I always say that commercial about what's in your wallet. Well, one of the things that should be in your wallet if you're a senior is definitely the AARP card, and go from there. Because a lot of benefits associated with the cards too, a lot of discounts. So it really is worth the effort. We're gonna have to get out of here. To tell me I gotta go, so I'm gonna have to close out. Again, thank you for joining us, Rosalinda. Thank you all our listening and viewing audience for being part of Dialogue Houston this week. We're going to continue with this journey and bringing you guests and topics and subjects that we all care about deeply here in the Houston area and the Houston region. Until then, until we come together next time, be well, be safe, and peace, power, and love.